SLT Fibre and experience the power of fibre technology. Sri Lanka's only super fast internet connection. SLT Fibre. Call 1212 now.
Tonight, almost a full circle. 4 ex-Muslim ministers, including Badiuddin, take oath as ministers. I'm not alone. President Maithripala Sirisena confident of public backing for the death penalty. President was duped. Opposition leader ridicules the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. All these stories and much more coming your way on First at 9 this Monday, the 29th of July 2019.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9.
මුහුණ සති කීපයකට කලින් Fair and Lovely men ගෑවට පස්සේ මාක්ස් අඩු වෙලා ෆෙයානස් වැඩි වෙලා.
මාක්ස් අඩු කරලා ඔයාගේ ෆෙයානස් ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එක වැඩි කරගන්න. Fair and Lovely men anti marks cream.
Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening to you and welcome to First at 9 on AdaDerana 24, Sri Lanka's news channel. I'm Katrina Chang. On to your top story tonight. 4 Muslim parliamentarians, including Rishad Badiuddin, who resigned from their ministerial positions, recently took oath as ministers before President Maithripala Sirisena a short while ago. Rauf Hakim was sworn in as the Minister of City Planning, Water Supply and Higher Education. Rishad Badiuddin took oath as Minister of Industry and Commerce, Resettlement of Protracted Displaced Persons, Cooperative Development, as well as Skills Development and Vocational Training. Meanwhile, Amir Ali Shihabdeen was sworn in as State Minister of Agriculture, Irrigation and Rural Economic Development. Abdullah Maharoof, meanwhile, took oath as the Deputy Minister of Port and Shipping. Following the swearing-in process, UMP parliamentarian Faisal Qasim expressed these views to journalists.
From the Muslim Congress, it was only our leader who took oath today. The rest of us didn't take oath because the issue of Kalmune has to be resolved completely. But then we had to let our leader take a position in the cabinet. Everybody from Rishad Badiuddin's party took oath. Accordingly, Rishad Badiuddin, Rauf Hakim, M.A.M. Maaroof and Amir Ali Shihabdeen were the ones to take oath.
Abdullah Maaroof Baradunna.
Today's appointment comes after the group held discussions on the topics of ministerial portfolios as well as the issue pertaining to the Divisional Secretariat of Kalmune North.
A group of Muslim parliamentarians who resigned from their ministerial portfolios on the 3rd of last month decided to re-accept their positions following a special meeting with Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe at Temple Trees last evening. The resignation of all Muslim public representatives of the government from their respective portfolios came at a time when there was public outcry against MP Rishad Badiuddin's alleged links to the Easter Sunday terrorists. Today it was reported that a special meeting was held between Muslim MPs and Minister Wajir Abeyewardene, where matters pertaining to establishing a divisional secretariat at Kalmune North was taken up.
As the Muslim Congress, we presented our proposals and the minister accepted it as a matter of principle. It will now be discussed with the Tamil National Alliance. We were promised that it will later be tabled as a cabinet paper.
Thereafter, another meeting was held at MP A.H.M. Fauzi's residence regarding their ministerial portfolios.
Because
70% of our issues have been resolved and we are prepared to fulfill our duties.
It was, however, reported that Deputy Leader of the Sri Lanka Muslim Congress, MP H.M. Harris, decided to not be a part of the discussion as the government failed to address issues faced by the Muslim people in the Eastern Province. MP Harris was the former Minister of Provincial Councils and Local Government.
The Easter Sunday attacks in Sri Lanka are likely to be the first case for India's top anti-terror probe agency, the National Investigation Agency, to probe. India's parliament amended an act recently empowering it to investigate terror cases abroad. Soon after the blast took place, a two-member NIA team had visited Sri Lanka in May and had deliberations with Sri Lankan authorities about the claims that several attackers who had links with Islamic State had travelled to India, including Jammu and Kashmir. Since then, however, the agency could not register a case in this regard on account of jurisdictional limitations. Indian daily newspaper The Tribune reported yesterday that the changed law has empowered the NIA to probe terror attacks targeting Indians and Indian interests abroad. Prior to the Easter Sunday attacks, India had warned Sri Lanka that Islamic State terrorists were planning to carry out strikes in the country. President Maithripala is confident that he is not alone in the fight against illicit drugs, claiming that 90% of Sri Lanka's population is in agreement with him over his decision to implement the death penalty on drug traffickers. The head of state expressed these views at an event held in Ratnapura today.
The program Beautiful Sabaragamu, initiated by Governor of the Sabaragamu province Dhamma Disanayaka, was launched at the Sabaragamu Provincial Council under the patronage of President Maithripala Sirisena today. The declaration on Kithul Palm was also promulgated at the event today.
Because of the severity of the illicit drug problem, new laws were introduced, laws that were already there were implemented, and new programs were launched. At the end, I decided to implement the death penalty as well. All prominent persons then came forward to raise objections over my decision. This is why gangsters, drug traffickers and other criminals celebrate, saying that there are people to save them from the president. However, I was not alone in this fight because 90% of the people of this country want the death penalty to be implemented. I decided to implement it on drug traffickers. We are only trying to move the country forward. The media shows how bad things are in the country, but then it really isn't that bad in reality. There is a limit to one's life and any position a person holds. That is why we always think we must do something with that limited amount of time we have. It's common for politicians and government officials to want to work alone, but success cannot be achieved by working alone. We need to work as a team and cooperate with each other.
Meanwhile, the newly constructed two-story ward complex dedicated for members of the clergy, as well as the X-ray unit of the base hospital in Ahaliyagoda, was vested with the public under patronage of the President today.
Opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa today ridiculed the government's motive behind ushering in the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, while saying the motive behind the amendment was to keep the Rajapaksa family away from power. The opposition leader also noted that the amendment has also pruned the powers of the president and the head of state was duped in the process.
Everybody says that the 19th Amendment is unsuccessful. We've been saying that all along. Attorney at Law Manohara De Silva has written a book which talks about this change very clearly. They targeted me and they added a clause limiting the number of terms of the president to 2. Then Basil and Gotabe were targeted when they said people with dual citizenship status can't contest the presidential election. They were then spooked, thinking Namal Rajapaksa would come into power. So another clause was added saying only those who are 35 years of age or above can contest. Are we that stupid when naming our presidential candidates? We do consider age, experience and maturity. This is an example of a country's constitution being changed just to get rid of a family. However, what was the real motive here? They reduced powers of the president along with the number of years he or she can be in office from 6 to 5. He or she is accountable to the parliament and people can file court cases against the president. They took away president's power to dissolve the parliament. They completely shred powers of the president and made him a common man. All this was done by Ranil Wickremesinghe's government. The president was deceived in the process.
Chairman of the Sri Lanka Podujana Perumuna, Professor G.L. Peiris, claims that the government is expediting proceedings to hold provincial council elections as a gambit brush the presidential election under the carpet. Addressing media in Colombo today, the Professor Peiris also revealed that the government is attempting to increase the number of cabinet ministers to 48.
Leader of the House, Lakshman Kiriyalla, has suggested that a proposal be entered into the Parliament agenda on the 31st of July to increase the number of ministers to 48 through the establishment of a national government. This is illegal. They use the banner National Democratic Front and calls it a national government as a trick to increase the number of ministers and deputy ministers. We now have 28 cabinet ministers and the proposal is to increase it up to 48. They say that a gazette notification will be issued pertaining to the provincial council elections. They are planning to seek the opinion of the Supreme Court under the 129th clause of the Constitution to hold the provincial council elections as soon as possible. When considering political mileage, this is beneficial for us. But what is the necessity for it at this point in time? This is merely a strategy to sweep the presidential election under the carpet. Meanwhile, parliamentarian Vasudeva Nanayakkara also weighed in on the topic of elections. Elections should be held at due time. Provincial council elections should be held now. In fact, it's overdue. We should prepare for the presidential election next. But we cannot delay the presidential election because it will tangle up the processes of the presidential poll.
Meanwhile, leader of the Pivituru Helurumia parliamentarian Udaya Gamampilla is confident that the State Lands Special Provisions Bill will not pass through Parliament during tenure of the present government. The bill is said to be introduced by the government to facilitate the establishment of an economic corridor which runs from Colombo to Trincomalee under the Millennium Challenge Corporation Agreement. The parliamentarian expressed these views at a media briefing in Colombo today.
Colombo සිට ත්‍රිකුණාමලය දක්වා
The United States and Sri Lanka had an agreement to create an economic corridor from Colombo to Trincomalee spanning across hundreds and thousands of acres. In order to facilitate this process, the government tabled the State Land Special Provisions Bill in Parliament. Because this bill was presented in Parliament prior to being tabled in provincial councils, we informed Supreme Court that this is in violation of the Constitution. Last Friday, the Supreme Court accepted our argument and informed the Speaker that the bill should be presented to all provincial councils to get their feedback before tabling in Parliament. Back in 2012, however, a Supreme Court determination given by former Chief Justice Shirani Bandaranaike with regard to the Divinangam Act states that if provincial councils are dissolved, the governors don't have the power to sign on behalf of provincial councils. Therefore, even if one provincial council is dissolved, then this bill can only be passed by a two-thirds majority in Parliament. But currently only one provincial council is in operation, which is the Uva Provincial Council. Therefore, if the State Land Special Provisions Bill is to become an act, this will have to be passed with a two-thirds majority in Parliament. Therefore, we are confident that this bill will not pass through Parliament during this government's tenure.
General Secretary of the Young Men's Buddhist Association, Mahindra Jayasekara, is discontent with the political leadership, saying that today's politicians can no longer be relied on to resolve the country's issues. Speaking at an event recently, he went on to say that come elections, it is up to the people to elect the right person who will promote harmony and unity among communities without thinking of personal gains. Also speaking at the same event, High Commissioner of Bangladesh Riaz Hamidullah stressed that mutual trust and respect must be fostered among communities in order to reap long-term gains in a country.
The 69th annual All Ceylon YMMA conference was held in Colombo yesterday under the auspices of Bangladesh High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, Riaz Hamidullah. The event was organized by the Young Muslim Men's Association of Sri Lanka.
Today, what we have is not the feeling of friendship. It is not the feeling of mutual trust. It is not the feeling of mutual dignity. We need to look back and see why we have not been able to build our nation based on these values. We failed to do that because our leaders failed to show the proper direction. Sri Lanka is not a failed state, but we are nearly there. The challenges the country is facing today are too important to be left only in the hands of politicians. It should be left in the hands of the people. We are nearing elections. We should elect a leader who will look after all communities, irrespective of religion, the community he belongs to, the race, as his own children. We should not be confining ourselves to traditional silos. We have to rise above politicians to build unity among Sinhalese, Muslims, Tamils and Burghers. Today, majority of the people think Muslims in the country are trying to outgrow other populations or other communities, a point of suspicion created in the minds of the people. So it is up to you to allay those fears. It is not up to a community to come and tell another community what they should be doing. If the leaders are given the opportunity and the freedom to take decisions from Colombo alone without understanding how peacefully people in their respective areas live, then they make wrong decisions.
Commonality is pluralism. Commonality is inclusion. Commonality is tolerance. Commonality is harmony. So today when we talk of distinctions and divergences, I always say that divergence and differences cannot be a challenge. It is a strength. It's an opportunity as much as language is a strength. So I think that is the correct translation or realization of mutual trust and respect. We really need to discover, understand. Every nation must be conscious and cautious so that short-term gains are not traded for long-term interests. That's again mutual trust and mutual respect.
Director of the Criminal Investigation Department, Senior Superintendent of Police Shania Besekar has lodged a complaint with the police against Attorney at Law Manoj Gamage. The complaint has been lodged over the lawyer threatening the SSP at a media conference. A media briefing of the National Alliance for Lawyers Associations was held on the 27th of July, where Dr. Mohammad Shafi and the actions of the Department of the Attorney General were strongly criticized. Speaking there, Gamage stated that the government isn't taking proper action against the doctor owing to his immense wealth. According to the lawyer, Dr. Shafi has assets worth 400 to 900 million rupees and is able to buy the whole Yahapalana government if he wanted. Gamage calls on SSP Shania Besekar to work in accordance with the law, keeping in mind that power does not remain forever. He also warns that Besekar might be able to experience the results of tampering the law in prison. Meanwhile, police fired tear gas and water cannons to disperse unemployed graduates protesting near the Lotus roundabout in Colombo today. They demanded a discussion with the President or the Prime Minister within 10 minutes. Due to the request not materializing within 20 minutes, the situation took an intense turn, with protesters trying to enter the Presidential Secretariat. Riot police resorted to using tear gas after the protesters attempted to push through a road blockade which had been set up to prevent them reaching the Presidential Secretariat. The protests also refused the offer to meet with the Prime Minister's secretary, attempting to enter the Presidential Secretariat again, which led the police to continue firing tear gas and use water cannons. Measures were taken to hospitalize the protesters who sustained injuries during the incident. Well, news just coming in. Deputy Minister Buddhika Pathirana has been sworn in as the State Minister before President Maithripala Sirisena just a short while ago. And with that, we will cross over to a short commercial break. We will have more local news right after that, so make sure you stay tuned. On a lighter note, the world's largest commercially available blue star sapphire has gone on display right here in Sri Lanka. It's worth more than $2.5 million and sits on top of a golden crown. The blue stone is owned by a private jewellery company where its director said similar jewels sit in bank walls or museums, whereas this one can be seen in their own showroom in the city of Kandy. According to the company, the gem weighs 332 carats but was once much bigger, with the original stone weighing in at more than 200,000 carats, equivalent to around 40 kilograms. Gemstones from Sri Lanka have been prized for hundreds of years, with the island famous for its blue sapphires, star sapphires and cat's eyes. Minister of Tourism Development John Amaratunga says that the cabinet has given the green light to grant free visa for Chinese tourists in a backdrop where the government also plans to reduce the number of airport taxes to facilitate more direct international and charter flights to operate. The minister is optimistic that through such measures, Sri Lanka will be able to achieve its ambitious target of attracting 2 to 2.5 million tourists by the end of this year. According to Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau, over 265,000 Chinese tourists visited Sri Lanka in 2018, a number that drastically drops after the Easter Sunday attacks. The officials, however, hope to attract at least 50% of last year's total by the end of this year.
Over 100 Chinese travel agents arrived in the country yesterday, becoming the largest group post-Easter Sunday attacks to help revive tourism in Sri Lanka. Their arrival is an outcome of the promotion drive Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau worked off in Beijing last month. The group consists of 107 Chinese travel agents and 12 media personnel who will explore Sri Lanka across 8 days, visiting all key tourist attractions. With Sri Lanka ready to launch free visa on arrival for 45 countries, including China from the 1st of August, Minister John Amaratunga believes it will help more Chinese travellers to visit the country.
We have so much of diversity that no other country in South Asia could offer, particularly to the Chinese tourists. We have no objection for Chinese tour guides coming along with their groups, provided they are accompanied by a local tour guide. We are going to cut down many of the airport charges in order to invite more airlines to come into Sri Lanka. So we would expect more Chinese airlines to come into Sri Lanka, either for direct operations or as charters. The government has taken a decision, Cabinet has approved free visa for all tourists who are coming into the country from China. We are also now trying to work on issue of visa on arrival as well. With more connectivity and the fact that there is going to be visa-free exemption, I am quite confident that we will have a large number of tourists coming from China.
Sri Lanka's tea exports in the first half of this year has reached the record high of 121.8 billion rupees or $682 million, up 7% from the same period a year earlier. A statement by Forbes and Walker Tea Brokers today said Iraq has retained the top spot as the largest importer of Sri Lankan tea for the period January to June 2019, followed by Turkey, Russia and Iran. It went on to say that Libya, China and Azerbaijan are some of the noteworthy importers, while countries such as India, Germany and the United States have also shown significant growth in imports for Sri Lankan tea. The figures come in a backdrop where the country's tea production in June saw a sharp gain. Business lobby group the Confederation of British Industry has warned the government that neither the UK nor the EU is ready for a no-deal Brexit on the 31st of October. The group was quoted as saying that while the UK's preparation to date are welcome, the unprecedented nature of Brexit means some aspects cannot be mitigated. It has published practical steps, it says, the UK, EU and firms can take. A government spokesperson said that the UK has increased the pace of planning for no deal. The CBI had previously said leaving the EU with a deal was essential to protect the economy and jobs. Sri Lankan shares hit their highest close in 6 months today, led by a rally in banks and diversified stocks, along with healthy purchases by domestic investors. The country's benchmark stock index jumped for a fifth straight session to end 2.08% up at 5,995.20, its highest close since the 29th of January. We now have Dimantha Matthew from First Capital Holdings with a brief report on today's market performance.
In the bond market, the yield curve remained broadly unchanged with some buying interest in the short and long tenor maturities. The stock market saw a very bullish sentiment today as the SPI surged over 100 points to end at 122 points up for the day. Heavy buying interest across the board was witnessed with the retail and high net worth participation. There was a foreign outflow that was recorded for the third consecutive day, primarily dominated by outflow in spends and distilleries.
The rupee ended week at 176 rupees and 22.25 per US dollar compared to Friday's close of 176 rupees and 15 to 25 cents due to imported dollar demand. Let's now take a look at how the rupee traded against other currencies during the day. Well, we have international news right after this commercial break, so make sure you stay tuned. China has condemned the recent anti-government protests in Hong Kong as horrendous incidents that have caused serious damage to the rule of law. A spokeswoman for China's top policy office on Hong Kong insisted that the territory's top priority was to restore social order. The comments marked a rare intervention by the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office. All the authorities in Beijing have condemned the protests and reiterated their support for Hong Kong's leader, Carrie Lam, on several occasions. Monday's intervention is widely seen as conveying the official views of China's top leadership on the civil unrest for the first time. The city has seen 8 consecutive weekends of anti-government protests against a proposed bill that would allow people to be extradited from the city to stand trial in Communist Party-controlled courts in mainland China. The U.S. Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coats, has become the latest high-profile figure to leave the Trump administration. President Donald Trump took to Twitter today announcing Coats would step down in mid-August and that he would nominate the Texan Congressman John Ratcliffe to replace him. Coats and Trump have often been at odds over Russia and North Korea. As Director of National Intelligence, it was Coats' role to oversee all 17 U.S. intelligence agencies, including CIA and NSA. But throughout his tenure, his assessments were routinely contradicted by the president, who has been critical of intelligence agencies. In January, the president called his intelligence chief passive and naive in their assessment of the threat posed by Iran. According to the latest tiger census, a neighbouring country, India is now home to nearly 3,000 tigers, a third more than it had 4 years ago. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who presented the findings today, said the tiger population has risen from 2,226 in 2014 to 2,967 in 2018. He added that India is now one of the biggest and most secure habitats of tigers. India is now estimated to be home to around 70% of the world's tigers. India counts its tigers once every 4 years. It is a long, arduous task that involves forest officials and scientists trekking across 500,000 square kilometers looking for evidence of the tiger population. New Zealand announced their 15-member squad for the Test series against Sri Lanka today. Following the 2019 World Cup heartbreak, Kane Williamson will return to lead the Kiwis, this time in the game's longest format. There will be no shortage of spinners for the Kiwis as they have picked 4 spinners in their 15-man squad, which includes Michelle Santer, Todd Astle and William Somerville, as well as Ajaz Patel. William Somerville and Ajaz Patel, 2 of the spinners picked in the squad, was instrumental in New Zealand's historic 2-1 series win against Pakistan in UAE last year. Patel bagged 13 wickets in the series while Somerville clinched 7 in the final test in Abu Dhabi. And with that, we conclude this edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining us and have a very pleasant evening.